Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, dear wonderful students. I always enjoy being in your company, so thank you very much, all the students, parents, teachers, and the leadership of this amazing industrial and educational family, the Birlas, and particularly the leadership here at B.K. Birla Institute. I'm touched by all the warmth you have shown, sirs and madams. I'm touched by the warmth because, also because I come from a very, very cold place called Ladakh right this morning. Truly touched by the warmth of Kalyan. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. When I went to the airport this morning, the Indus River was partly freezing with minus 18 degrees, and it more than makes up for the warmth that nowadays Ladakh is missing, to be here amongst all of you with all the warmth. So thanks once again. I feel really honored to be amongst people who are doing such great service to the nation and to the society, the locality, not just through industry and business, but through well-being of the people around. And I was happy to notice that an all-round holistic well-being where your mind through the educational institutes, physical well-being through the hospitals that you just mentioned, and the temple, I'm sure, takes care of the spiritual well-being of the people. I haven't seen many organizations that take such complete care of the people around them. I warmly congratulate the whole Birla family of institutions and industries, and consider it an honor to be here. I bring you greetings also. In Ladakh we say Jule, so that's the way you greet people in Ladakh. So Jule, all of you. And if you ever come to Ladakh, this word will help you a lot, because it means namaste, it means dhanyavad, it means good night, good morning, and even thank you. So with this one word, you have learned quite a bit of Ladakhi. So it's a great word to connect. I'm happy to share a little bit of my life and some learnings from whatever struggles and mistakes we made, and hope that the young people here will, through their own lives, bring changes in our great nation, become change makers, and lead this nation to even higher greatness. I'll share a little bit of where I come from, because it's a very different kind of environment, and it's a great way to integrate, to be meeting people from different places, like myself from the top north. As you may have seen in the images, it is a very different landscape where monsoon clouds do not reach, with the Himalayas standing there, and we are in the rain shadow of the Himalayas, so there is hardly any precipitation, just 100 millimeters in a year. So it's a desert, and life is very different. Some would say harsh, but we find our own ways of finding meaning and purpose, and therefore do not find it that harsh also. My own childhood began in a very tiny village, even further away from the city in this remote region. And it was so tiny that it had only 5 households back then. But today, it has grown 100% to become 10 households. So, being so small a hamlet, we didn't have schools in this village. Although some would consider it a difficult challenge, but looking back, I think it was actually a great good thing that I didn't have schools in that village, because it gives you another way of finding out, discovering the world around you. And I always say, no school is better than bad schools. So it's not that there were no schools, so I could not learn. Children are designed by nature to learn. They are packed with this great formula called curiosity. And as long as you have that, children will always learn. So I was happy and lucky to discover the world by going into the fields, into the river, onto apricot trees and jumping around. I often tease my friends who had schools that when you were learning through pages of a book about roots and shoots and leaves, and were memorizing L-E-A-F leaf and L-E-A-V-E-S leaves, I could go and see the seeds go in, roots go under, and shoots come up, and leaves unfurl without having to bother about the spellings and so on. So that in itself can be a great way of learning. And add to that, I was also lucky that I could learn from my own mother in my mother tongue, a luxury that has become very rare today, unfortunately. We pressure our children in languages before they have grasped them, and overlook or ignore the great asset that they have in the form of their own mother tongue, which they acquire even before their birth. And we set that aside and start in new languages, thereby actually giving them a challenge at that early age. So I was lucky, I always feel, to be able to learn in my own mother tongue. And once you have a good grasp of your mother tongue, it doesn't take long to acquire other languages. I very much say that in our country, more and more children should get this opportunity to unveil the world and discover the world in the comfort of the strength of one's own mother tongue. And that way, I think Maharashtra is a great state where this is being given a lot of importance. I'm also involved in the Maharashtra International Education Board, which actually is trying to bring Marathi as a medium and doing international education. And I heard that your school will be looking into participating into that. I just wanted to say how it is important that children get a great beginning without the stress of an unfamiliar language and so on. So anyway, After this tough childhood, not so far, not till 9. It was actually a fun childhood. But around 9 is when my relatives thought that I was wasting my childhood, and they dragged me into a school, and I often say there ended my true learning. You know? And I was made to memorize all these words and so on, and I had the most challenging few years after that, because teachers couldn't understand that someone couldn't understand the language taught in the school. They couldn't understand that without those languages like English and Urdu and Hindi, one could also develop concepts and so on. So earlier years were very difficult for me. In the first school, my teachers were not very understanding of the problems of a child like me, who came from a very different region with a very different background and a language that is very different from the medium in the schools, and therefore treated me rather in a discriminatory way. And that made me think about how children learn from very early stage. Why I'm sharing is that I've been observing through myself how children can shine or dry up in the environment that they get from schools and teachers. So in this first school, because I didn't speak the language, didn't understand much of the syllabus, I was often made to stand outside the classroom. And I always wondered, how would that help me? Keeping me outside the classroom, as if that would make me understand more than keeping me right in front of the teachers. But so it was. And today I think of that as the only way I could call myself an outstanding student. Yeah? So I saw the difficulties of how a child goes through when there isn't a nurturing environment. But then in the next school that I went to, I actually ran away to another school, and this school happened to be so good. The teachers were so supportive. They could understand the problems of each child and could bring out the best out of the children. And here I started flowering. Here I started not only catching up with the other students, but actually doing good in every field, acquiring new language, and even speaking and public speaking and so many other things I started learning in the second school. And I could see that the love of teachers, the respect that a teacher can give a child, will make the child work much harder than the punishments could ever do. So I worked really, really hard to keep that respect, to stand up to that expectation of the teachers who were so warm, and started doing quite well. Cutting it short, finally I was in my 11th, 12th class. I didn't know what I wanted to study or become, unlike other friends. So they wanted to become engineers, doctors, and some administrators and so on. I didn't see the reason why. And was looking for a reason to pursue something. Then I stumbled upon this chapter on light, optics, in 11th grade, I think. And that made me think of various ways I could use this lenses and mirrors, concave, convex. It completely fascinated me, and I could see how in a cold place like Ladakh, you can redirect the sunlight into underground cellars and grow vegetables and so on. And I started thinking of pursuing that further and asked around. Finally, an uncle of mine told me that this you can follow if you take up mechanical engineering. So that was the day when I decided I would study mechanical engineering. And while doing so in the engineering college, I, for some reasons, had to support education. And for that, I opted to teach students in Ladakh, students who were facing a lot of challenges. I didn't know at the time what exact challenges they were facing, but I could see that there was a huge rate of failure in the government school system. 95% of the students used to fail every year, repeatedly. And I thought I can support my own studies with a little income from teaching, at the same time help these students. So I took leave from my college in the vacations and went back to Ladakh to teach students. And this was a very successful enterprise. I started a coaching system with hardly any money in my pocket. I didn't even have enough money for the next meal, but somehow some enterprising spirit took me to a hotel owner in the capital, and I told him that I would like to rent your hotel for the next 3 months. And strangely, the hotel owner said yes to this 19 years old, partly because it was off season in winter and they were not running anyway. So I took the hotel, employed some stenographers and so on, again with no money, put up posters and started this coaching system, which had some very interesting, innovative ways, which I still believe could be very useful. For example, I would have the brighter students of any subject help the weaker ones after I would take my class, put them together, and the weaker ones definitely would be helped. But what I was surprised was that the brighter ones became stars. You actually do not grasp the concepts until you have taught someone. And so the weak ones became good and the good ones became stars. And likewise, this system became very popular and students started pouring in, and the large number was compensated by such peer learning systems and so on. To cut it short, after 2 months, I had not only enough to support that year's expenses at my college, but enough for the whole 3 years of engineering just in 2 months, which would come to roughly 4 lakh rupees by today's standard in 2 months for a 19-year-old was a very life-changing experience. Life-changing experience for 2 reasons. One is that, young people in their teens have a lot of fascination for money and so on. I could see that money can be made anytime you want to. You can make enough for 3 years in just 2 months. So that's not the only thing in life. You can do that anytime. So in a way, I lost that craze for money. In other words, I got demonetized long back, way before this term got popular. That was a great relief. Great relief it was. The second thing that changed me was, while teaching, I could see the challenges that the students were facing. And that changed my life forever. I came only to support my education, but then when I saw that these students who were otherwise failing in large numbers were so bright when taught in the ways that they could understand, they were so good at grasping even the most complicated concepts. So I started thinking that in life, it's not just what I need, but also what needs me. You know? So this realization was a very important milestone in my life. I thought that, okay, I want to do my engineering and light and lenses and so on, but these bright minds are shackled just because of a badly designed system, and to unshackle them, to give them wings is more important, is perhaps what needs me more. So that's when I started thinking of doing something about the education system so that one doesn't need to do the charity of helping them. The system itself becomes better. So I did my engineering, but my mind was more towards education reform. Engineering always has been my first love, but the need to change the education system was a louder cry that I had to address. So as soon as I finished my engineering, I met other like-minded young people, and together with them, we started helping these young people, initially through teaching, coaching. Very soon we realized that if we only taught them at the 10th grade, 11th hour, we would be doing the same thing for another 50 years, and the system will be producing broken products for us to repair. That's not a charity, because it keeps, needing us to be helping for decades. So we said we should rather go to the source and change the system so that products are not broken in the first place, and you don't have to do the charity of repairing them. And that's when we started looking at the government school system in the villages, rural areas, and to change them, to train the teachers, to organize the village people to take ownership of their schools and to demand quality education on one hand, and to equip the system to deliver when quality is demanded by training the teachers, by changing all the textbooks. The reason why students in Ladakh used to fail by 95% was not because they were dumb or retarded, although the system thought that and blamed them for being almost retarded. We tried to diagnose and saw very soon that it's actually because the system makes no sense for the mountains of Ladakh. You have textbooks and curriculum that's the same for the mountains as for the plains like Delhi and so on. So up there at 12,000 feet, a child would be memorizing A for apple, B for ball, fine. But then F for fan in minus 20 degrees does not make any sense. It doesn't make the squiggle F any simpler to have an example like fan. And the poor child would ask the teacher, "Sir, what is this?" And the teacher might say, "This is a fan. You don't know what's a fan?" And the child would say, "No, I don't know." And the teacher would say, "Actually, I also don't know." So, and it's real, I'm not making up. This is the situation when you blindly take something from some place to some other place. I saw that the textbooks there were just a blind copy of something that was done in Srinagar, the capital. So it was taken to the remote areas because it was done in the capital, Srinagar. And then I saw later that Srinagar also, it didn't make much sense. it was just a copy of something they did in New Delhi. Copy of a copy is taken to the mountains, and by that time it's hardly legible. Now in Delhi also it doesn't make sense, much of what we study in the textbooks, because it's a copy of something they did in London long ago. So you can imagine what sense it will make to the mountains when a copy of a copy of a copy is taken to the mountains. It took me much longer. I understood, okay, this is why it doesn't work, the system. It took me much longer and more work in education later to realize that it actually doesn't make much sense in London to begin with also. Children there suffer as much because of a purely theoretical, removed from life system. So therefore, reforms were actually needed in all the process, but in extreme places like the mountains of Ladakh, it became a joke when you took it blindly and copied. So that's why the students were failing, and they were made to feel like they have a problem, like they had some mental retardation or so on. So therefore, I decided to work more on this so that schools, as I said, do not break the children. And slowly, we collaborated with the government, because government schools are what caters to the masses in the rural India, which is much larger. And therefore, we made it a point to make it good there. And slowly, over the years, the results started changing. First, it was 5% pass every year consistently. Slowly, it became 12, 26, 55, and then finally, it went up to around 75%. So it proved that it was not really a problem with the children. When you make the system more conducive, children actually perform even if they looked like retarded in the mountains. Yeah? So that was my work with the education system. Before I share some of my learnings from life that might be useful in your lives, I will request, there is a short film which summarizes what I just explained, our work and the context in which this educational work was done, and the project that we are now working on to make education meaningful and relevant to life. Education should not remain just a ritual for the sake of itself, but rather arm and equip and strengthen the future citizens in dealing with life in their own context. So to do that, now with the experience of this school reform and a school that we specially did for those who still failed. I told you how this came down to 25% or so. So for them, we started a school where they would learn in different experiential ways and learn the way they learn if they didn't learn the way they were taught. So even the students who were so-called failures started doing great in this special school. And today, this experience of how we can teach in experiential, hands-on, engaged ways, we are trying to take it to university level to create an applied, hands-on, experiential university for the mountains, although it could be similarly applicable for other contexts like the oceans, the deserts, and so on. Unfortunately, today, our higher education system also, like the lower ones, does not distinguish whether it is for the deserts of Rajasthan or oceans of Maharashtra or Kerala or the rainy rainforests in Cherrapunji or mountain deserts of Ladakh. It just does the same thing and makes everybody equally distant from any use of it. So we are working on reforming higher education also, which you can see in this short film, and then we'll go further to some life lessons that I would like to share with you. Yeah.
I've never let my schooling interfere with my education, so said Mark Twain. How about you? Do you miss your school or college days? You perhaps do, but perhaps not for the classrooms and teachings. You actually perhaps wished every day that the school be closed the next day so you could stay home. But here's a school in Ladakh where the most dreaded punishment is to be sent home for 2 weeks, where students learn by doing things, where they engage in various innovations to solve real-life problems like climate change, where they run the school themselves like a little country with an elected government and learn management and governance that way, where they learn communication by running the campus newspaper and radio, science by designing and building their own school, solar-heated mud buildings that stay at plus 15 even when minus 15 winters. Kindness and compassion through introspection and meditation. A school where the criteria of admission is not your percentage, but that the conventional system has failed you.
Hi, I'm Sonam Wangchuk from Ladakh, a remote mountain region in the Indian Himalayas. 25 years ago, when I was finishing my own engineering education, I saw that schools were a pain for everyone, but for mountain children, it was doubly painful and irrelevant. Children who spoke Ladakhi or Tibetan at home were made to sit all day memorizing in alien languages like Urdu or English. F for fan, S for ship, T for train.
Till recently, every year, 95% of the students used to fail in the all-important 10th grade exams.
Together with like-minded friends, we launched SECMOL, the Students' Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, and said enough is enough.
Working with the government, we rewrote many textbooks, retrained the teachers, and organized the villagers. And the results started changing too. For those who still failed, we started the alternative school that you just saw. And the results? Tewang Rigzin went on to become a top journalist and later became the education minister of Ladakh Hill Council at 27. He had failed his 10th grade 5 times. Stanzin became a filmmaker and has been winning awards across countries. He had failed 4 times. Miss Tinless is today a celebrated social entrepreneur. She had failed 3 times. But now we see that the state of higher education is no better. Not only for Ladakhis, who of course are doubly disadvantaged again, but for you in the big cities too. It's time we change this. We in Ladakh are dreaming again. This time our dream is to create an alternative university that will use all our learnings from the past 25 years. Once again, a hands-on doers university, where the School of Business runs real-life companies on campus. The School of Tourism runs high-end hotels and simple homestays. The School of Education runs innovative schools. The revenues from these sustain the university while the students get free higher education and of course hands-on experience. But this is more than a dream now. His Holiness Chethang Rinpoche, one of the top spiritual leaders in Tibetan Buddhism after His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is supporting this cause as the chief patron. The Hill Council government of Ladakh has earmarked roughly 200 acres of land, and the ice Stupa artificial glaciers have already started greening this desert. A fully solar-heated, mud-built university township is being planned by some of India's top architects.
Together, let's start the next learning revolution, where education is not limited to just the 3 R's, all too much to do with the head alone, where skills of the hands and kindness of the heart are given equal importance.
Sure, it would take significant financial resources to materialize this ambitious dream. Recently, I was awarded the prestigious Rolex Award for Enterprise for the Stupa artificial glaciers.
Sonam Wangchuk.
I contribute my Rolex Award as a seed for this cause. Thank you very much.
I have decided to contribute the roughly 1 crore rupees as a seed fund to finally raise 150 crore rupees for the first phase of the project. And I very much hope that you all will join me and match this contribution according to your capacities. Together, we can change the face of higher education forever, not just for Ladakh, but for the whole world. So join us. The future has already begun.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, as a part of this systemic reform that we were bringing, once the results went up to 75 or so, we wanted to help those who were still failing, because nobody should come out with a feeling of failure after spending a quarter of their lives. So therefore, we established this very special alternative school where the criteria of admission will not be your percentage and grades, but that you have failed in the system. So there is one place where they have priority. If you have not failed, you can be in the waiting list. Yeah? And as you saw, when given the right environment to learn holistically, they start shining. And that's what I would like to share with you today. We somehow lost our way. Otherwise, I think this country has been a great learner. Somewhere we lost our way and we reduced education to just the 3 R's. I think the British taught us things like education is the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Actually, it doesn't even start with R, reading, writing, and arithmetic, perhaps. So as shallow as it sounds, it addresses just the head part of our learning whole. Head alone cannot be of helpful in life or beyond. Instead of these 3 R's, our country has always valued the 3 H's of education, and that's what I today promote in Ladakh and beyond, and want to urge you all, young brothers and sisters, to look for, making yourself more holistically developed as much as possible within the system, if not in whatever ways until the system changes, but to develop yourself completely, not just with the bright head, which of course is what you get from the algebra and arithmetics and physics and chemistry. Unfortunately, most of our schools in the so-called modern world limit themselves to just this head part. And therefore, we get these deformed people with a big head and crippled hands that cannot do things. We produce more so-called handicapped people from our schools because we know all the theory, but when it comes to practice, people are really lacking. And therefore, it is very important that the future of India equally values skills of the hand, the second H, skilled hands, and not just a bright head that makes us maybe arrogant with information and knowledge, but really poor at application of it to change the world around us. And therefore, the second H of hands is very, very important. So don't lose any chances where you can apply what you learn in classrooms into real world. That's when innovations take place. That's when problems get solved and products get made. This is where most of our schools are lacking, but some new forms like IB, etc., lay a little more stress on experiential, practical application and so on. But that's not enough also. Just head and hands alone cannot solve the problems of the world. If you have a very bright head and very skilled hands, you can completely destroy the planet also, which is what is happening. All this development that is landing us in a mess is actually because of just a head and the hands, and actually even pickpockets have a very bright head and a very skilled hands. Yeah? And so do terrorists. They can cause a lot of damage to the world if they only sharpen or hone their head and hands. It will not be complete until you have developed the third edge, a kind, compassionate heart. And that's what is missing in today's world. That's what is missing even in the most advanced systems of education on the planet, and that's what we need to take care of our planet, to take care of our fellow citizens, the empathetic, compassionate heart. And I would very much urge that our schools in India, particularly schools that are, very progressive like yours, should not only follow what they do in Cambridge or IB, but should dare to lead the world. The West doesn't know this. They hardly go beyond head and the hands. We in India have given to the world Vedas, yoga, vipassana. It's time that we led the world with a more holistic approach to education, where developing the heart, the kind heart, is given equal importance. Because all the crisis of today is because of all the industrial development that we have seen. Unless we have empathy for nature, unless we have empathy for fellow beings to bring equality and to bring environmental peace, peace with nature, we cannot have a happy world. And therefore, what I have learned through all my work in education is that to have a complete human being, it should be a balanced development and, most importantly, of the heart. I was recently asking a group of students. Generally, we treat our elders, our grannies, who may not have gone to school, as uneducated, illiterate. And I was saying, if life, the syllabus of life was not just physics, chemistry, maths, and English, if it was a complete learning and development of the 3 H's, as I said, the syllabus of head, the syllabus of hands, and the syllabus of heart, can you tell me where you fare compared to your grandparents who may not be schooled? So I was asking, okay, in the domain of heart, how would you rate your grandparents? They were saying they are far more compassionate than today's children can be. We would give them, say, if it was 133, 3 portions, I was asking how much marks if you would give just to speak in the language they understand. They would say, we'd give them 30, and yourselves 15. We are not, trained in schools to collaborate, cooperate. We are more trained to compete, self is the first thing you are made to take care of. So that's against heart. And therefore, we get very low marks in the domain of heart. And in the domain of hands, again, our uneducated elders are actually much better at survival, at growing things, at repairing things, at building things. They get much higher marks, and our brightest students also cannot do much with their hands, so very poor marks. then remains the head. Okay, we have done much better with maths and physics and so on, but our elders are also not too bad. They may not be schooled, but they are not stupid. They are very bright. So coming down, I was actually doing this exercise. What finally came was that uneducated, so-called uneducated elders would get, I think it was 75 out of 100, and the toppers of this school system would get 50 at the most, if it was a syllabus of life that we followed and not just examination and degrees and so on. So I would very much appeal to you all to not ignore this empathetic heart, and moved by that empathy, you can solve then problems of the world. Once the heart is in the right place, your hands and your head cannot do damage to the world. Otherwise, it can be dangerous. Secondly, thank you. Secondly and finally, everybody seems to, want to succeed, to be confident. And I always share my own life experience with my students that you want to be confident, but confidence doesn't just come one fine morning. There is a formula that I have believed and seen work, and I would like to share with you. Confidence comes to those who have a spirit of initiative, to students who have a spirit of initiative to take anything that comes their way, to not shy away from opportunities, whether it is to speak in public in the school, or to clean something, or to repair something. Those who have an innate spirit of initiative, I'll do it. Those who raise their hands and go forward and do it, whatever, whenever arises, these children who have initiative take action. And then when they take action and do the thing, they get experience. When they get experience, and again, they develop confidence. And that's when you meet success. So rather than just wishing to be confident and successful, I would like to appeal to you to be initiative-taking in life. Wherever you get the first opportunity to do something, to help someone, to do whatever, if there's something needed to be done, most so-called clever people will find a way to hide behind others and let somebody else do the job. Clever, but not very clever, because by missing that opportunity and not taking that initiative, you didn't get the experience of an action, and without the experience, you will never grow in confidence, and without that confidence, you will not succeed. The one who looks almost stupid and says, you have to clean the grounds, I'll do it. You have to organize the little children, I'll do it. The one that takes initiative and goes forward may look somewhat stupid, but will have taken that action, which will leave that child with a lot of experience of succeeding and failing, which cuts short the path to success. And with that experience, they get the confidence to next time do it themselves, to next time lead others. And with that confidence, then the path becomes very easy to success. So start with initiative, and therefore you will be taking actions. And the actions you take will give you experience, and this experience will give you confidence. But to take initiatives, which can be positive or negative, initiatives can be driven by the wrong reasons also, I would urge to be moved by the third edge, the heart, empathy. Empathy should drive you to take initiatives. Empathy for the children who were failing by 95% every year is what moved me to take action in educational field. Empathy for the people who were cold in winter, minus 20 degrees, and it's not very different inside, indoors, is what moved me to innovate and find passive solar heated houses. Empathy for the shortage of water is what moves you to start freezing and making artificial glaciers. I never, ever, ever thought of rewards and awards or any of these things which are byproducts, which follow on their own. I never, ever thought of any of these. It was this heartfelt empathy for the students to solve their problems in the exams, in the mass failures, that drove me on the path of education. Similarly, on using science, high school science. You all study heat in 9th grade or 10th grade, conduction, convection, radiation. It was this empathy for the cold winters of Ladakh, the people who suffer, that I started applying conduction, convection, radiation to capture the sun's rays, store it in the walls, and make it convect through the building and radiate at night through the walls. Use of these knowledges driven by empathy to solve problems of the people around can take you a long way. And then success and recognition are byproducts. You really don't plan for byproducts. You plan for excelling in doing what you can with the learnings that you get from your school, from your teachers. Always think about how you can apply it to solve the problems of the people. Just memorizing it to pass the exams will not take you far. It will leave you in the domain of the head and not even train you to solve problems, leave aside developing your heart. So with this appeal to see this great school that has been already doing such wonders, to get your wonderful students into a new era that leads the way to leads the world in a more complete, more humane education system that does not create more problems than the solutions it provides. You know, that's what we are seeing in the world today. The way the world is going down with all kinds of environmental problems, which has put a big question mark on the survival of the planet itself, can be solved by progressive thinking based on our heritage of thoughts in this country. I appeal to you to prepare for that world with the head, hands, and heart. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.